We'd been married for a month, and she wouldn't let me touch her. We were more like roommates than husband and wife. I finally worked up the courage. I want a divorce, I said, the words hanging heavy in the air. She looked up, her expression unreadable. Then touch me, she shot back. How will you know if you don't even try? I was completely stunned. 1 second, I was ending our marriage. The next, she was daring me to save it. The tables had turned so fast, I felt dizzy. My gaze fell to the glass of water on the coffee table, my fingers tightening into a fist. A divorce, I repeated, my voice raw with frustration. The living room fell silent, the only sound the ticking of the clock on the wall. The woman on the sofa opposite me, my wife, Clara Hayes, finally looked up. A pair of cool, intelligent eyes met mine from behind her glasses. We'd only been married a month, but for that entire month, she'd been an iceberg, distant and untouchable. We shared a bed, but lived in different worlds. Our days punctuated only by silent meals. I'd had enough. Why, she asked. Her voice was steady, but I caught the faintest tremor in it. I let out a bitter laugh, my eyes tracing the long line of her legs. I felt my throat tighten. Because this isn't working, Clara. I finally let the dam break. A month, and you won't even let me touch you. Do you even see me? Or am I just a ghost in your house? She stared at me, a strange light flickering in her eyes. After a long moment, she bit her lip. Then touch me, she said again, her voice a low challenge. How do you know it won't work if you don't even try? I froze. I thought she had to be joking, but in the next second, she tossed a small box onto the coffee table between us. It landed with a soft thud. I looked down, a brand new box of Trojans. My mind went blank, blood rushing to my head. I looked up at her and saw that her eyes were red-rimmed, glistening with unshed tears. But her tone was defiant, almost goading. Go on, she said, her voice shaking slightly. Try. Prove to me that we're not right for each other. I was floored. What happened to the cold, distant professor? Who was this woman, challenging me with tears in her eyes? A confusing mix of anger and something else, something electric, churned in my gut. My throat was tight. Clara, don't mess with me. She reached up and slowly took off her glasses, placing them on the table. Her dark hair, usually tied back, tumbled over her shoulders. The shift was startling. The cool, collected academic was gone, replaced by someone fragile and raw. I'm not messing with you, she said. If you think we're so incompatible, then prove it. My heart hammered against my ribs. My God, was she serious? 1 minute, she's an ice queen. The next, she's on the verge of tears, daring me to sleep with her. I suddenly realized I didn't know this woman at all. She was a fortress of ice on the outside, but right now, she was saying things that could start a fire. The silence stretched on for a few agonizing seconds. She bit her lip again and turned her head away, refusing to look at me. If you want a divorce, fine. I won't stop you, she whispered, her voice thick with emotion. But don't you dare put all the blame on me. You're the one who gave up before you even tried. The quiet accusation hit me like a punch to the gut. This was not how I'd pictured this conversation going. I had expected a cool nod, a detached as you wish. I never expected her eyes to be red, her voice to be choked with hurt. I ran a hand through my hair, my mind a chaotic mess. Clara, what is this? She sniffled quietly, then nudged the box of condoms closer to me with one finger. You said you felt rejected. So, here's your chance. My mouth was dry. The air in the room was suddenly thick with a tension so palpable I could taste it. Yet I was frozen in place. Married for a month, and I'd never felt more like a stranger in my own home. What was going through her head? This woman, cool, brilliant, with legs that went on for days, had been the unattainable girl in college, and now she was the ice queen of Blackwood University, according to her students. And somehow, she was my wife. Legally, officially my wife. But for 30 days, she'd refused any intimacy, any closeness, drawing a line between us that I couldn't cross. I thought she didn't care about this marriage at all, but the tears welling in her eyes told a completely different story. I opened my mouth, but my voice came out as a rasp. Clara, what do you really want? She finally looked at me, her voice trembling but firm. I don't want you to misunderstand me. I'm not unwilling. I'm just. She bit her lip, trailing off. My heart clenched. Not unwilling? Then why the cold shoulder for a solid month? I had no words. The room was filled with the sound of our breathing, a tense, charged rhythm. My gaze dropped back to the box on the table, my fingers twitching. This whole situation felt absurd. I'd walked in here to end a marriage, and now I was being dared into starting it. I snapped my head up, my eyes locking with hers. Clara Hayes, you better be sure about this, I said, my voice low and intense. Because if you're asking me to try, you don't get to regret it later. Her body went rigid, and a faint blush crept up her neck, but she didn't look away. And in that moment, I saw a storm of emotions in her eyes. Fear, hesitation, and beneath it all, a tiny, unmistakable flicker of hope. My stomach dropped. This so-called divorce wasn't the end of something. It was just the beginning. I stared into her red-rimmed eyes, my thoughts a tangled mess. I was the one who wanted out, so how did I end up being the one backed into a corner? After her challenge, she said nothing more. She just turned, walked into the bedroom, and closed the door behind her. I sat on the sofa, staring at that box of Trojans for a full 10 minutes. My head was spinning, my heart was pounding. What the hell was that? I came here to get a divorce, and instead she lit a fuse inside me with a single sentence. The next morning, I pushed open the bedroom door to find her already dressed and ready to leave. She wore a tailored silk blouse and a pencil skirt that stopped just past her knees, her long hair falling loosely over her shoulders. She looked pristine, untouchable, like a goddess who wouldn't deign to walk among mortals. But my eyes snagged on the delicate curve of her calf, the way the morning light caught the smooth fabric of her skirt. I swallowed hard, tried to act casual. About last night, I started. Don't, she cut me off, her voice as cool as ever. That one word was all it took to reignite my anger. So that's how it is? I thought. Throw down a challenge, and then pretend it never happened? Does she think I'm an idiot? She slung her bag over her shoulder and moved toward the door. I shot out an arm, blocking her path. Clara, what the hell is your game? She frowned, finally looking me in the eye. What game? You dared me last night, and now you're just going to walk away with a don't? Her gaze flickered for a second before her cold mask settled back into place. Well, you didn't try, did you? My heart stuttered. This woman was going to be the death of me. Without another word, she sidestepped me and walked out, leaving me standing alone in the entryway, a storm of frustration brewing in my chest. Was she toying with me? I gritted my teeth, a new resolve hardening inside me. Fine. You want to play games? Then let's play. That evening, she came home from work. I was waiting for her in the living room. She pushed the door open and paused, seeing me sitting there in the dim light. Why are the lights off? I didn't answer, just watched her. She shifted uncomfortably, setting her bag down and shrugging off her jacket. The thin fabric of her blouse was almost translucent under the single lamp I'd left on, outlining the soft curves of her body. A fire ignited in my gut. I stood up slowly and walked toward her, one deliberate step at a time. She backed away. What are you doing? I let out a cold laugh. Didn't you tell me to try? Panic flashed in her eyes as her back hit the wall. I didn't mean right now. Then when I pressed, cornering her, her breathing was shallow and quick, her eyes wide and red-rimmed again. For a second, I thought she would give in, but then she shoved me hard, ducked under my arm, and fled into the bedroom. The door slammed shut in my face. I stood there, frozen, my hands clenched in a fist so tight my knuckles cracked. What was her deal? First, she dares me, then she runs. It was like she was intentionally turning me on just to throw a bucket of ice water on me. A wave of pure fury washed over me. I stalked to the bedroom door and spoke, my voice low and dangerous. Clara, this isn't funny. Her muffled voice came from inside. I didn't mean for it to be. Then what do you mean? She didn't answer. The silence was maddening. I leaned my forehead against the cool wood of the door and took a deep breath. She wasn't cold. She was scared. But right now I was past caring. She was driving me insane. The third night, she came home drunk. A faint scent of wine clung to her. Her cheeks were flushed, and her eyes were hazy. I frowned, helping her steady herself. Why did you drink so much? She looked up at me, a tipsy smile playing on her lips. Department happy hour. She let out a soft giggle, her voice husky. You said you wanted to try, didn't you? My entire body went rigid. Was she drunk for real? I stared at her. She collapsed onto the sofa, her legs crossed, her skirt riding up slightly. The sliver of pale skin was blinding under the lamplight. My throat went dry, my pulse hammering. This woman was going to kill me. Gritting my teeth, I moved toward her, leaning down until our faces were inches apart. Clara, are you sure? She blinked slowly, then whispered no. I froze. What? Her gaze drifted, but her hands found my chest and pushed surprisingly strong. No, I'm scared. Her voice was barely audible, but the words shot straight through me. I froze completely. Looking into her eyes, I suddenly understood. She wasn't toying with me. She was genuinely struggling. Something inside my chest cracked. I straightened up, taking a step back and breathing deeply. Damn it. I was actually starting to feel sorry for her. I got her a glass of water. She took it, her hand trembling slightly. Clara, I said, my voice softer now. What are you so afraid of? She bit her lip, refusing to answer. She just bowed her head as a single tear splashed onto the back of her hand. My heart clenched. In that moment, for the first time, I realized that this woman wasn't an unassailable fortress of ice. She was just trapped inside a prison of her own making. I didn't push her anymore. I just reached out and gently pulled her into my arms. Her body stiffened for a moment, but she didn't pull away. "Remember," I whispered, "I'm your husband. You don't have to be afraid of me." Her shoulders started to shake as she leaned against my chest. The room grew quiet again, filled only with the sound of our breathing. My anger slowly melted away, replaced by a confusing mix of sympathy and tenderness. We didn't go any further that night. She fell asleep in my arms, a deep, exhausted sleep. But I lay awake all night, staring at the ceiling, a single thought echoing in my mind. I have to figure this woman out. Clara slept in my arms. That night, she slept soundly, but I didn't sleep a wink. Staring at the ceiling, one thought circled endlessly in my mind. This woman was an enigma. On one hand, she was so cold, she could freeze you out from a mile away. On the other, she was so fragile, she could break into tears at a single word. I couldn't figure her out, but I knew one thing for sure. I couldn't live in this state of limbo anymore. The next morning, when she woke up and found herself curled against me, she immediately went stiff. "You." She sat up abruptly, her face flushing. I rubbed my temples, my voice firm. "Clara, we need to talk." She paused, nibbling on her lower lip. "About what?" "Our marriage," I said, cutting straight to the point. "It's been a month. You've treated me like a stranger, and I felt like an outsider in my own home. So here's the deal. Either we get a divorce or we set some ground rules." She stared at me, her eyes wide. I tossed a piece of paper and a pen on the bed between us. "Write up a contract. Let's spell out exactly what being married is supposed to look like." She looked stunned, then let out a cold laugh. "You think a marriage is a business deal? It's better than what we have now." I shot back. The atmosphere turned rigid. She was silent for a long time. Then, to my surprise, she picked up the pen. "Fine." I was shocked she'd actually agreed. She bent over the paper, writing with quick, decisive strokes. A few minutes later, a marriage contract was sitting in front of me. I scanned it and almost laughed out of sheer frustration. Clause 1. 1 kiss, mandatory, every day. Clause 2. At least 1 date night per week. Clause 3. No going to bed angry. All arguments must be resolved the same night. Clause 4. Mutual respect. No bringing up past mistakes. I stared at her. What the hell is this? She pushed her glasses up her nose, her expression unreadable. "A contract. You wanted one, so I wrote one. Do you have a problem with it?" I was speechless. I had wanted to lay down the law, and she had completely flipped the script, turning it into a set of rules for a high school romance. "Are you serious?" She gave a small, firm nod. "Of course." I gritted my teeth. "And what about marital duties?" I pressed. "You know, times when we're supposed to connect." Her gaze flickered, but she kept her face a cool mask. "Then add it." My eyebrows shot up, a spark of anger igniting in my chest. "Oh, so you want to play it that way?" I snatched the pen, and right below her clauses, I added my own. Clause 5. Marital duties will be fulfilled. I finished with a flourish, slammed the pen down, and glared at her. "Sign it." She hesitated, a faint blush coloring her cheeks. But after a moment, she bit her lip and signed her name. The contract was official. The next few days, it was actually in effect. The first morning, as she was about to leave for work, she stopped at the door and turned to me. "We missed one." I blinked. "Missed what?" She stood on her toes, leaned in, and gave me a quick, soft kiss on the cheek. Her lips were warm. Her scent was sweet. I stood there, completely frozen, long after she had turned and left, my heart hammering against my ribs. Okay, maybe this contract thing wasn't so bad. That evening, she dragged me to the grocery store. Clause 2, she announced. Weekly date night. I raised an eyebrow. A trip to Trader Joe's is a date. Of course, she said deadpan. I rolled my eyes. But watching her push the cart, carefully selecting avocados and fresh bread, a strange warmth spread through my chest. Maybe this is what normal married life was supposed to feel like. But just as I was starting to soften, she threw up another wall. Later that night, I moved closer to her, intending to cash in on Clause 5. She instantly tensed, her eyes wide with panic as she pushed me away. I can't. My frustration boiled over. Clara, are you playing games with me? She bit her lip, her eyes filling with tears. No, She couldn't finish, the tears already streaming down her face. In that instant, my anger vanished, replaced by a deep, aching confusion. What was she so terrified of? Why did she pull back every single time we got close? I stared at her, my voice low. Clara, you have to talk to me. She just shook her head, refusing to speak, tears falling silently. I was at my wit's end, but I couldn't bring myself to push her any further. With a heavy sigh, I turned over and lay with my back to her. The room was suffocatingly silent, but I knew, with absolute certainty, that our marriage was hanging by a thread. Divorce or to keep fighting? I didn't know. All I knew was that if I didn't find some answers soon, I was going to lose my mind. The next day, I taped the contract to the bedroom wall. With a red marker, I circled Clause 5. Clara, I said, my voice even, I'll give you time, but don't forget you signed this. She stared at the paper on the wall, her face pale, her fingertips trembling. I could feel her fear, but I also knew I had to push her. It was the only way we were ever going to break this stalemate. This battle for our marriage had only just begun. The marriage contract was taped to our bedroom wall, the red circle around Clause 5 like a constant, silent accusation hanging between us. Clara glanced at it every day, and every day, a flicker of tension crossed her face. But she never crossed that line. Life continued in this awkward state. Until one day, I got off work early and decided to pick her up. She taught at Blackwood University, where she was known campus-wide as the Ice Queen. I parked near the main gate, leaning against my car to wait. It wasn't long before a crowd of students emerged from the main academic building, their young faces bright with energy. And right in the center of them, the object of all their admiring glances, was Clara. She wore a simple blouse and a skirt, her hair pinned up loosely, heels clicking on the pavement. She radiated a cool, restrained elegance, like a flower that bloomed only in the most remote, untouched places. The students were clearly fawning over her. One young man nervously offered her a bouquet of flowers. Professor Hayes, these are for you. She barely glanced at them, a small frown creasing her brow. Thank you, but I don't accept gifts from students. Watching from a distance, I felt a surge of pride. Look at all these guys chasing her, and she's my wife. Just as I was about to walk over, a man with slick back hair and a smarmy smile cut her off. Clara, heading out? I'm walking to the parking garage myself. Let's go together. He looked to be in his late 30s, with a soft belly pushing against his shirt. In his hand was a box of expensive-looking chocolates. Clara's face hardened. No, thank you. But the guy was persistent, trying to force the chocolates into her hands. Oh, come on, don't be like that. You shouldn't walk alone. Isn't it better to have some company? The students around them started whispering. My eyes narrowed, and a hot flash of anger shot through me. Who the hell is this guy? I pushed off the car and strode toward them. Clara, I called out. Everyone froze. Clara looked up, her expression a mix of surprise and alarm. What are you doing here? I ignored her, walking straight up to the smarmy guy and pushing the box of chocolates back into his chest. My wife said no. The silence was deafening. Then the students erupted. Wife? Oh my God, Professor Hayes is married. The slick-haired man's face turned ugly. He glared at me. And who are you? I smirked, wrapping an arm around Clara's shoulders. Her husband. Clara stiffened, but didn't pull away. The man's face went from sour to furious. He forced a smile. Clara, you married? Why didn't you tell any of us? I cut him off. Why would she? A venomous look flashed in his eyes before he masked it with a sneer. I see. So that's why you've been so cold all these years. You had someone waiting in the wings. The students gasped. My anger, which had been simmering, boiled over. My voice dropped. What did you just say? The man leaned in, his voice a low hiss meant only for me. Let me give you some advice, buddy. A woman like Clara isn't for just anyone. You think you hit the jackpot? Please. My eyes narrowed to slits. But before I could respond, Clara spoke, her voice like ice. Professor Adler, you've crossed a line. Her gaze was sharp enough to cut glass. I would appreciate it if you didn't bother me again. The man, Adler, looked as if he'd been slapped. I shot him a triumphant smirk and turned Clara away. You heard her. My wife has been very clear. As we walked away, I could feel a slight tremor in her shoulders. Back in the car, I let her go, my voice tight. Who was that? She stared out the window, her voice flat. A professor in my department. Mark Adler. He's always been a nuisance. I gripped the steering wheel. A nuisance? Clara, that was harassment. She didn't say anything. That only made me angrier. What is wrong with you? How long has this guy been bothering you? And you just take it. She pressed her lips together, refusing to look at me. The silence in the car was heavy, suffocating. I slammed my fist on the steering wheel. Do you really think you have to handle everything on your own? She flinched. I turned to her, my voice raw. Remember, you're my wife. You're not fighting these battles alone. The car was silent for a long time. Finally, she whispered, thank you. My chest tightened. The look in her eyes was no longer the distant coldness I was used to. but something soft and vulnerable. In that moment, something shifted deep inside me. That night, she stood in the doorway of the bedroom, her voice quiet. "Ethan." I looked up. She was holding the marriage contract. "Thank you for today," she said. "And clause 5. I'll work on it." I froze. Then a slow warmth spread through my chest. She ducked her head, the tips of her ears turning bright red. "Just give me some time." I walked over to her, cupped the back of her head, and pulled her gently toward me. "Okay," I said, my voice thick. I leaned my forehead against hers. "But remember this, Clara Hayes. You're my wife. And if anyone ever messes with you, they have to go through me first." Her body trembled slightly in my arms, and I could feel it. The wall she had built around herself was finally, slowly, starting to crumble. That night, she placed the marriage contract in my hands, her voice soft, but with a new, profound sincerity. "I'll work on clause 5. My heart hammered in my chest. I wanted to pull her into my arms and never let go. But just as quickly, she slipped away and retreated into the bedroom, leaving me alone with a wildly beating heart that refused to calm down. It was the first time since we'd gotten married that she truly yielded. In the days that followed, the change in her was palpable. The cold mask was gone, replaced by a quiet warmth. In the mornings, she'd sometimes leave a cup of coffee on the counter for me. When I got home from work, she'd greet me with a soft, "You're back." The words were simple, but they were more than I'd ever gotten from her before. She was trying. I swore to myself I wouldn't mess this up. A few nights later, around 10, she was at her desk, a small frown on her face as she worked. Stacks of papers were piled high, her red pen flying across the pages. I brought her a glass of warm milk. "Take a break." She looked up, her eyes tired. "I still have 30 more to get through. They can wait." I set the milk down, moved behind her, and gently started rubbing her shoulders. She flinched for a second, but didn't pull away. A small victory. I softened my touch. "Why do you push yourself so hard?" I murmured. "Student dissertations. They're on a deadline." I couldn't help but look down at the delicate line of her neck, the way her hair fell softly against her skin. A familiar, powerful urge washed over me. "Clara," I said, my voice low, "we're husband and wife, not roommates." Her body went rigid. The pen in her hand skittered across a paper, leaving a crooked red line. I leaned in closer, my breath warm against her ear. She looked up at me, her eyes wide with a familiar panic. "Ethan, you said you'd work on it," I whispered, my gaze locked on hers. Her cheeks flushed a deep red. She bit her lip, her breathing becoming shallow. The silence stretched, thick with unspoken tension. Then she spoke, her voice barely a whisper. "It's not that I don't want to. I'm just afraid." I froze. My heart squeezed painfully in my chest. "Afraid?" She lowered her eyes, her voice so quiet I could barely hear it. "Because of before." She trailed off, her fingers clenching the pen so tightly her knuckles turned white. My stomach dropped. I had a sickening feeling I knew what she meant. "Your ex-boyfriend?" Her shoulders trembled. It wasn't denial. The air grew heavy. My throat felt tight. I gently took the pen from her hand and turned her chair to face me. "Clara." I looked at her, at the tears welling in her eyes. "I'm not him," I said softly. "I will never hurt you." The first tear fell, then another, splashing silently onto the papers in her lap. In that moment, she looked so broken it hurt to see. I pulled her into my arms, holding her tight. She resisted at first, then collapsed against me, burying her face in my chest as quiet sobs shook her body. "I can't be lied to again," she choked out. "I can't be abandoned again." I gritted my teeth, my voice thick with emotion. "Then listen to me. From now on, I'm not going anywhere. You're my wife, and I will protect you for the rest of my life." She cried harder, her arms slowly coming up to wrap around me, holding on as if I were a lifeline. We stayed like that for hours. She told me everything. Her ex had wooed her with sweet words and grand promises, only to cheat on her and then blame her for it, calling her cold and unloving. The betrayal had nearly destroyed her. After that, she'd built a wall around her heart, believing it was better to be alone and cold than to ever risk being hurt like that again. As I listened, my fists clenched, a murderous rage building inside me. All I could do was hold her tighter, silently promising myself that I would show her that marriage wasn't a trap, but a safe harbor. By the time the sun started to rise, she had fallen asleep in my arms, her breathing even, the tense lines around her eyes finally relaxed. She looked like she'd finally laid down a burden she'd been carrying for years. I leaned down and gently kissed her forehead. "It's okay, my love. From now on, you can leave everything to me." When she woke up the next morning, she had overslept for the first time I could remember. Looking at her peaceful face, I felt a sense of contentment I'd never known before. This was our real breakthrough. Not a physical act, but a connection of two souls. But I knew, even then, that her walls had only just begun to crack. The real test was still to come. The morning sun sliced through a gap in the curtains. I blinked, my first sight the woman curled up in my arms, still fast asleep. With her hair spread out on the pillow, Clara looked less like a formidable professor and more like a young girl. Last night's confession seemed to have washed away all her defenses. My heart softened. I leaned in and pressed a gentle kiss to her forehead. She stirred, a small frown creasing her brow, and snuggled closer without waking. A real, solid sense of peace settled over me for the first time. When I was about to leave for work, I found her in the kitchen, another first. On the counter were 2 pieces of toast and a glass of milk. She avoided my eyes, her voice slightly strained. I just threw something together. Don't complain. I stared for a second, then a grin spread across my face. Well, is this my professor wife's new way of showing her affection? Her face immediately turned red. Just eat it, she snapped, swatting at me. I caught her hand, my smile widening. I'll eat it. I'll eat it every day for the rest of my life. She pulled her hand away and retreated to the bedroom, but not before I saw the tips of her ears glowing red. A few days later, I left work early to pick her up from the university. I arrived just as classes were letting out. She was walking out of her building in a sharp skirt suit, her hair in a neat bun, heels clicking with an authority that commanded attention. A group of students spotted me waiting and started whispering. Wow, look, Professor Hayes' husband is here to pick her up. That's so sweet. I wish my boyfriend would do that. I stood there, feeling ridiculously pleased with myself. When she saw me, she froze, and her professional mask immediately dropped into place. What are you doing here? Picking up my wife from work, I said, as if it were the most normal thing in the world. Don't be ridiculous. This is a university, she hissed, though her eyes darted around nervously. The students were definitely watching. I decided to lean into it. I walked right up to her and took her hand. A professor this beautiful? If I don't come get you, someone else might try to steal you away. Her face was now a brilliant shade of crimson. She tried to pull her hand away, but with an audience of her students, she was trapped. She just glared at me. The second we were in the car, she turned on me. Were you doing that on purpose? I feigned innocence. Doing what? I was just picking up my wife. Nothing wrong with that. She huffed and turned to stare out the window, but I caught the small, involuntary smile playing on her lips. Slowly, the changes became more and more obvious. At dinner, she started putting food on my plate. If I worked late, she'd leave a meal for me with a note. Heat this up before you eat. One day, after she finished grading papers, she handed me a piece of candy. To keep you awake. I stared at the candy in my palm and grinned like an idiot. She put her cool mask back on. What? If you don't want it, give it back. I quickly unwrapped it and popped it in my mouth. It's delicious, I mumbled around the candy. She rolled her eyes, but again, her ears turned pink. Still, she had her boundaries. One night, I got out of the shower with just a towel around my waist. She was coming out of her study at the same time, and our eyes met. She froze, her gaze dropping for half a second before her face completely ignited. Can't you put some clothes on before you come out? I raised an eyebrow. We're married, Clara. Married people still deserve some decency. She shot back before slamming her bedroom door. I stared at the closed door, half amused and half exasperated. We'd broken the ice, but getting her completely comfortable was going to take time. A few weeks later, the university hosted its annual faculty gala. I went with her as her date and saw her in her element for the first time. When she spoke on a panel, she was calm, articulate, and so sharp she left a few of the older, tenured professors speechless. Every eye in the room was on her. I was bursting with pride. I couldn't help myself. I stage whispered to the person next to me, "That's my wife." The comment earned me a withering glare from the stage. When we got home, she kicked off her heels and collapsed onto the sofa, exhausted. I went over and started rubbing her feet. She jumped, trying to pull away. "What are you doing?" "Just helping the guest of honor relax." "You were incredible tonight." I held her foot firmly, gently kneading her arch. She bit her lip, her face flushed, but this time she didn't fight it. "Clara," I said softly, "don't be afraid of me." She went still, her gaze flickering. After a long moment, she gave a tiny, almost inaudible, "Okay." My heart skipped a beat. That single word felt more significant than any grand declaration. But just as our world was finally settling into a warm, comfortable rhythm, an unwelcome ghost from the past appeared. I was waiting for her in the university parking garage when I saw a well-dressed man step in front of her, blocking her path. "Clara," he said, his smile confident, his eyes holding a familiar, possessive glint. Long time no see. Her face instantly turned to ice. I have nothing to say to you. A sick feeling coiled in my stomach. The real test, I realized, was just about to begin. Clara, long time no see. The man's voice was smooth, casual, but carried an undercurrent of entitlement that set my teeth on edge. I sized him up. Early 30s, tailored suit, perfect hair, carrying a leather briefcase. He had the look, but the smug smile on his face made my skin crawl. Clara clearly wanted nothing to do with him. I have nothing to say to you, she repeated, her voice like steel. Please move. But he wouldn't budge, stepping closer to block her way completely. Clara, are you really going to be like this? After everything we had, you're just going to pretend it meant nothing? My gut clenched. So this was him, the ex. Clara's expression was glacial. Julian, don't flatter yourself. I told you a long time ago. We're over. Julian. I filed the name away. I stepped forward, moving to stand directly between them, putting myself in front of Clara. My gaze was sharp. Excuse me. She's my wife. Who are you to be blocking her way? He blinked, then a cold smirk spread across his face. So you're Ethan. That's right. A regular 9-to-5er, right? How many zeros are on your paycheck? What kind of piece of junk car are you picking her up in? He looked me up and down, his tone dripping with condescension. Clara, are you serious? You're going to spend your life with this guy? Does he even deserve you? Clara's face went pale. She started to speak, but I cut her off. Whether I deserve her is none of her damn business, I said, my voice dangerously low. I reached back, took her hand, and laced our fingers together. My wife chose me. That's all that matters. Clara flinched at my touch, her eyes wide as she looked at me. Julian laughed. She chose you? Clara, are you being honest with yourself? He took a step closer, his eyes boring into her. Why did you marry him? Was it to spite me? To run away from me? The questions hit her hard. She looked pale and cornered, her lips pressed into a thin line. A knot of dread tightened in my stomach. Before I could say anything, Julian delivered the killing blow. You can't lie to yourself, Clara. You're not over me. How long have you two been married? A month? Don't tell me you haven't even slept together. The words were a dagger aimed straight at Clara's heart. She gasped, color flooding her cheeks. In that same instant, something inside me snapped. I lunged forward, grabbing him by the collar of his expensive suit. Who the hell do you think you are? I snarled, saying the kind of garbage to her. He didn't even flinch, that infuriating smirk still on his face. Getting defensive? Did I hit a nerve? He leaned in. Let me tell you something. Clara is mine. The only reason she hasn't dated anyone for years is because she was still waiting for me. You're just a placeholder. Crack. My fist connected with his jaw. He stumbled back, clutching his face, his eyes dark with fury. You hit me? I'll do a lot more than that if you ever speak to her again. I bit out, my whole body shaking with rage. People in the parking garage were starting to stare. Clara's face was as white as a sheet. She grabbed my arm. Stop it, Ethan. This is the university. I was breathing hard, my eyes still locked on Julian. He wiped a smear of blood from his lip with the back of his hand and sneered. You really think he can give you the life you want, Clara? You'll regret choosing him for the rest of your life. When you come to your senses, you know where to find me. He shot me one last hateful look and walked away. The air was thick with the aftermath of the fight. I turned to Clara and saw a storm of emotions in her eyes. She looked like she wanted to say something, but in the end, she just whispered, let's just go home. The ride back was heavy with silence. I gripped the steering wheel, Julian's words echoing in my head. Don't tell me you haven't even slept together. I didn't dare look at her, afraid I'd see hesitation in her eyes. Finally, I broke the silence. Was that really him? Your ex? She was quiet for a moment before giving a soft, yes. Why did you break up? She flinched, her gaze darting away. I don't want to talk about it. My heart sank. I clenched my fists. Don't listen to anything he said. I won't let anyone talk to you like that. She looked up, a flicker of surprise in her eyes. You hear me? I pressed, my voice raw. You are my wife. I've got your back. No one gets to hurt you. The car fell silent again. After a long moment, she finally spoke, her voice barely a whisper. You don't regret this? Regret what? I scoffed. So you have a past. Everyone has a past. Right now, you're with me. Her lips trembled, and her eyes grew shiny. She looked like she was fighting back tears. I reached over and took her hand, my grip firm and steady. She startled, but she didn't pull away. Back at our apartment, she sat on the sofa, lost in thought. I brought her a glass of water. Don't think about him. He's just a piece of trash. She looked at me, her voice small. You don't understand. I do understand, I said, cutting her off. You're afraid he's going to ruin your life. But he won't. Not while I'm here. Her eyes welled up. Thank you. she whispered. My heart ached for her. I reached out and pulled her into my arms. Don't thank me, you idiot. She stiffened for a moment, then relaxed against me. In that moment, I knew. Julian's appearance hadn't driven us apart. It had just pulled us closer. And this was only the beginning. After that night, Clara wasn't herself. During the day, she was still the cool, composed professor, commanding her lecture hall with confidence. But the moment she came home, she would retreat into a shell of silence, looking haunted. I knew Julian's reappearance had ripped open an old wound, but she wouldn't talk about it. A few days later, I went to pick her up from work and found her in her office talking to another female professor. I waited outside, not wanting to interrupt, and accidentally overheard the other woman sighing. Clara, you can't let him get to you. After what that monster did to you, he has no right to show his face again. Clara's voice was low. I'm not letting him get to me. I just don't want him to destroy my life again. He's already done enough damage, her friend said indignantly. If it weren't for him, you wouldn't still be so terrified of men. My blood ran cold. So that was it. The truth. On the drive home, I was silent. Clara noticed. You're quiet tonight, she said softly. I glanced at her. What did he do to you, Clara? The truth. She froze, her hands clenching in her lap. She didn't answer. It wasn't until we were parked in front of our apartment building that she finally took a deep breath. Do you really want to know? Yes, I said, my voice firm. She looked down, her voice so low it was almost lost. He cheated on me. 2 simple words, but they landed like a punch to the gut. She managed a bitter, broken smile. I was so stupid. I trusted him completely. We were talking about getting married. Turns out, he was sleeping with my best friend. And when I found out, he blamed me. He said I was cold, that I wasn't womanly enough, that I didn't know how to be a proper wife. Blood was pounding in my ears. What happened after? I asked, my voice tight. Her eyes were red, her fingers digging into the car seat. He told me. He told me to my face that a woman, like me, was only good for looking smart on a stage. That in bed, I was useless. Her voice broke on the last word, the memory tearing through her as a tear finally escaped and rolled down her cheek. A sharp, violent pain shot through my chest. No wonder she couldn't let me near her. No wonder she was terrified of intimacy. She hadn't just been betrayed. She'd been systematically humiliated. I didn't say anything. I just unbuckled my seatbelt, leaned over, and pulled her into my arms, holding her as tightly as I could. She struggled for a second, then gave in, curling into me, her shoulders shaking with silent sobs. He's wrong, Clara, I whispered into her hair. Everything he said was a lie. He doesn't get to define you. To me, you're perfect. You're the best woman in the world. She cried harder, her voice muffled against my chest. You don't understand. That kind of humiliation, it follows you like a nightmare. I clenched my fists, making a silent vow. I would help her escape that nightmare. A few days later, I planned a weekend trip to the Berkshires. I told her we both needed a break, a change of scenery. Secretly, I just wanted to get her away from all the ghosts. In a small town nestled in the mountains, we walked through a farmer's market, and for the first time, she reached out and took my hand, lacing her fingers with mine. I saw a softness in her eyes I'd never seen before. She wasn't pushing me away. She was letting me in. That night, a massive thunderstorm rolled in. The power in our little inn went out, plunging the room into darkness. I lit a candle and saw her huddled in the corner of the bed, her face pale. Scared of the dark, Clara? I asked gently. She didn't answer, just bit her lip, her eyes wide. I went and sat beside her, wrapping an arm around her shoulders. It's okay. I'm here. She trembled, then finally looked at me. Her eyes were glistening with tears. Ethan, what if I can never get over this? Will you? Will you get tired of me? My heart broke for her. Never, I said, my voice unwavering. Listen to me. I will never get tired of you. Even if it takes you a lifetime to feel safe, I will be right here with you. She stared at me, her tears spilling over. Then, she launched herself into my arms, her voice choked with emotion. Why are you so good to me? My throat tightened. Because you're my wife, I whispered. Because I love you. The air went still. She pulled back, her tear-streaked face illuminated by the flickering candlelight. Then, she leaned in and kissed me. It was a desperate, hungry kiss, full of tears and longing and the breathtaking courage of a woman finally letting go of her fear. That night, as the storm raged outside, we finally came together. In the aftermath, trembling in my arms, she whispered, if I had known you were like this, I never would have wasted a single day. I held her close, my heart full. In that moment, I knew I hadn't just saved her. I had finally, truly won her. After that night, our relationship transformed. It was like we'd gone from frozen tundra to a blazing fire. The next morning, I woke up to find her snuggled against me, Her dark hair fanned out across the pillow. She no longer looked like a guarded professor, but like a woman who had finally found a safe place to land. I smiled, gently stroking her cheek. She blinked her eyes open, and when she saw me looking at her, a blush crept up her neck. "What are you looking at?" she murmured. I grinned. "Just my wife. The most beautiful woman in the world." She playfully slapped my chest and rolled over, turning her back to me, but I could see the smile she was trying to hide. From that day on, our marriage was real. She started waking up before me, and I'd come downstairs to the sight of her in a robe, her hair messy, quietly making coffee. I'd wrap my arms around her from behind and rest my chin on her shoulder. "Good morning, Professor," I'd whisper in her ear. "The kitchen is a no-cuddling zone," she'd reply, but she'd lean back into my embrace. At breakfast, she started making me omelets, always adding extra bacon. "Is this a reward for good behavior?" I teased. She'd glare at me over her coffee cup. "Eat it, or I'll give it to the dog." We didn't have a dog. I devoured it in 3 bites. Best omelet I've ever had. And she'd failed to suppress a small, pleased smile. But even in our newfound bliss, there were little sparks. One day, I picked her up from work and saw a few of her male graduate students hovering around her, eagerly carrying her books. My jaw tightened. I walked right over, took the entire stack of books from them, and draped my arm possessively over her shoulder. "I've got it." The students stared. "Professor Hayes, who is this?" I smiled broadly. "Her husband." Their jaws practically hit the floor. "Wow, Professor Hayes is married." They looked so crestfallen, it was almost comical. I felt a surge of satisfaction and deliberately ruffled her hair in front of them. She shot me a death glare, and as soon as we were home, she pinched my arm. "What was that in front of my students?" "Ow, I was staking my claim." I protested, rubbing the sore spot, protecting my territory from poachers. She rolled her eyes, but her ears were bright pink. The best moment, though, was when she got jealous. A new, very bubbly graphic designer started at my firm, and one night, she walked me to the elevator after we finished a late project. The doors opened, and there was Clara, waiting for me. The designer smiled brightly. "Great work tonight, Ethan. Talk to you Monday." Clara's face went blank. She turned and walked away without a word. When we got home, she dropped her purse on the sofa and crossed her arms. "Did you enjoy that?" I was confused. "Enjoy what?" "Her," she snapped. "The way she was smiling at you. The way you were laughing with her. Is that your type?" I almost burst out laughing. "Clara, are you jealous?" She froze, and her face went from pale to crimson in a split second. She tried to storm off, but I caught her and pulled her into my arms, my grin wicked. I never knew the great Professor Hayes could get jealous. "Let go of me," she struggled. I held her tighter, whispering in her ear, "Don't worry. You're the only woman I see." Her body went rigid, her breathing hitched. After a long moment, she mumbled, "You're ridiculous." But she melted against me. Life became sweet. We'd go grocery shopping, and she'd walk ahead with a serious expression, but when we checked out, I'd find my favorite snacks hidden among the vegetables. I'd lean in and whisper, "Admit it, you secretly care about me." She'd blush and tell me to stop being a narcissist. But the snacks always made it home. We cooked dinner together, her chopping vegetables while I worked the stove. I'd sneak up behind her, wrap my arms around her waist, and cover her hands with mine as she held the knife. She'd jump. "Be careful. You'll make me cut myself." I just laugh. Teamwork makes the dream work. The little moments added up, chipping away at the last of her defenses. The cold, distant professor was gone. In her place was a woman who could pout, get angry, feel jealous, and laugh until tears streamed down her face. I knew, finally, that she had given me her whole heart, and I spent every day trying to prove I was worthy of it. She was my wife, the woman I would protect and cherish for the rest of my life. The sweet days passed so quickly, I started to believe nothing could ever go wrong again. Then he came back. It was a Friday afternoon when I went to pick Clara up from work. The moment I stepped on campus, I could feel that something was wrong. Students were gathered in small groups, whispering and staring at their phones. "Can you believe it? That stuff about Professor Hayes. You see that post? It says she was dumped and that someone was paying her bills for a while." "No way. Not Professor Hayes. She's so proper." My stomach dropped. I walked faster, heading toward her building. There, on a public forum for the university's online portal, was an anonymous, explosive post. The title was vicious: Blackwood Professor's Sordid Past and Sham Marriage Exposed. It was filled with screenshots of fake text messages, blurry, out-of-context photos, and a twisted narrative that painted Clara as a manipulative gold digger. It was designed to ruin her, and there she was, standing in the middle of the quad, staring at her phone, her face ashen, her eyes red-rimmed and glistening with unshed tears. A white-hot rage erupted inside me. Who did this? I roared, striding over to her. The students scattered. Clara looked up, startled. Ethan, don't. I ignored her, pulling her into my arms and shielding her from the curious stares. It's okay, my love, I said, my voice low but fierce. I'm here. No one is going to touch you. But it didn't stop there. That night, at home, her phone blew up with notifications. The story had spread to local news blogs. The post had been updated with new details, including the fact that we hadn't consummated our marriage for the first month. It was a deeply personal, humiliating detail, weaponized to destroy her reputation. She was pale, her fingers trembling as she scrolled. I snatched the phone out of her hand. Stop reading this garbage. But everyone will see it, she whispered, her voice shaking. The students, the dean. Clara. I took her hands in mine. Trust me, this is all lies, and you are not going through this alone. She looked at me, her eyes filled with a desperate, helpless fear. It broke my heart. The next day, I found him, Julian. He had somehow found out about our early struggles and twisted it into a weapon. I met him at a coffee shop. He was as arrogant as ever. You see, Ethan, you don't deserve her. She's a respected academic. Your marriage is a joke. Just end it now, and she can be with someone on her level. Someone like me. I laughed, a cold, bitter sound. You? After what you did to her. I know everything. His expression soured. So what? The university, the public, they won't be so forgiving of a woman with a stain on her reputation. If I can't have her, I'll make sure no one else can. My hands clenched into fists under the table. I wanted to smash his perfect face in, but I knew violence wouldn't solve this. I had to outsmart him. A few days later, the university called an emergency faculty meeting to discuss the issue of Professor Hayes' professional conduct. The pressure was suffocating her. As we walked into the meeting room, I squeezed her hand. Let me handle this. In front of the dean, professors, and student representatives, I stood up. My voice was clear and strong. My name is Ethan, and I am Clara Hayes' husband. Those rumors you've all been reading are lies. Every single one of them. She is a dedicated teacher and a good, honest person. Her only mistake was trusting the wrong man a long time ago. But that was his failing, not hers. And she does not deserve to be slandered for it. I looked around the room, meeting every eye. I want to make one thing perfectly clear. She's my wife, my only wife, and that will never, ever change. A shocked murmur went through the room. Clara stared at me, her eyes shining with tears. After the meeting, the university didn't issue an immediate statement, but the tide had turned. Students started posting messages of support online. Professor Hayes is the most dedicated teacher I've ever had. These rumors are disgusting. The pressure began to lift. Clara's eyes, when she looked at me, held a new kind of light, one of complete and utter trust. That night, she wrapped her arms around me, her voice thick with emotion. Ethan, why would you do all that for me? I stroked her hair. Because you're my wife. Protecting you is my job. Tears streamed down her face as she pulled my head down for a deep, searing kiss. Within a week, an investigation revealed Julian as the source of the smear campaign. The public backlash was swift and brutal. He lost his job and his reputation. The storm was finally over. We were sitting on our balcony, watching the sunset. She leaned her head on my shoulder. Ethan, for a second there, I thought I was going to lose everything. I took her hand. You will never lose me. She was quiet for a moment, then she sat up, her eyes serious. Then let's have another wedding. A real one this time. I stared at her, then a huge grin broke across my face. I pulled her into my arms, laughing. Yes, let's do it. I want the whole world to know that Clara Hayes is my wife. The city lights began to sparkle below us. She was laughing and crying at the same time, her face buried in my chest. I knew, with a certainty that filled my entire soul, that this was our real beginning.